Three, two, one.
Action.
Hello, everyone. This is Frank and Nick. We are here with episode 10 of our podcast, Untitled ZX,
That
also
is,
known as Movie Talk. Nick, how's it going? You're back in school?
and I would rather not be.
No? You got a lot of work this week?
Yeah, I have to finish an essay by tomorrow afternoon. Do I know what I'm talking about? Not a chance. But once again, that's the class where I'm winging it and hoping for the best. So,
Okay, that works. How was your weekend?
uh, mostly uneventful.
What was the highlight?
Well, there was one highlight, but that wasn't over the weekend. That was on Thursday, so it doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
It doesn't count as part of the week. I mean, we can count the whole week as a weekend because I was
Well,
off.
one part of your highlight should be when you got to see me at the steakhouse. So,
Sure, let's call that a highlight.
okay, there you go. That's a good answer. All right, let's talk about today's agenda. So, we're gonna do a little bit of a breakdown of Dune Part 3 trailer that came out. We got TV Talk Steel Ball Run, which I'm curious to even understand what that's about. So,
That will be fun.
and then we're gonna talk about Project Hail Mary, which you saw on Friday, I believe.
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay, and then we got our Star Wars time. We're gonna talk about five things that could have been seen in the Acolyte. So, let's
Yep.
get into it. First of all, Dune Part 3 trailer started.
Um,
Tell me what happened. What do we see that's new?
Okay, so there is a lot to go over here. I actually did a reaction video on the channel a couple days ago. Quick little thing I threw together on Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon rather.
Hmm.
Um, so this is the third film is based on the second of Frank Herbert's original books. The first book was too long to fit into a single movie, so parts one and two both cover the first book. This is
Yep.
mostly based on the second book, which has not been adapted to film before. So a lot of these things are sort of things we're seeing on screen for the first time. I mean, I guess they were depicted in the Children of Dune miniseries in 2003, but that had a budget of like $12 in a dream. So here we are doing that same story on a blockbuster budget. And ever since, because I was reading the book it's based on, Dune Messiah, when part two came out back in 2024. And
Mhm.
my biggest takeaway of part two was how they handled Zendaya's character, Chani, who is radically different in the film adaptation compared to the book. And I'm not sure how they're going to pull off her character in this film because if they make her character faithful to Messiah's book, then they will assassinate everything they've done right with her in the last film. But if they but if they don't do that, then it won't be faithful to the book, which I mean, Dune, the books get insanely weird. Like we are already getting into like kind of like weird, like trippy territory here, but this is going to be tame compared to, I mean, they're marketing this as the final chapter, but I also know well enough that if this makes enough money, I know Villeneuve wants nothing to do with this franchise after part three. He wants to adapt the first two books, and that is it. But there's six books in the original series alone, so if they really want to continue, they will find someone else to continue it. And me personally, I really want to see them get up to God Emperor of Dune, and I want Guillermo del Toro to do that. But that's getting into speculatory territory. Um,
But what was in the trailer? Is there anything new in the trailer? I know in the last one we saw Charlemagne's character with a mask on, right? Or maybe
yes, that was the little like teaser image they posted the day before. Right after we finished recording our episode, they dropped character posters depicting all of the main characters, and they're like, "Yeah, trailer event tomorrow." And I'm like, "Yeah, we all saw that coming." But
so what happened in the trailer? What did we see?
so one thing that stood out to me a lot is there's a lot of like really kind of insane footage of large scale like battle sequences which doesn't necessarily line up with the book.
Hmm.
That's sort of because the first book ends with like the promise of this holy war coming, this jihad that's going to kill billions in his name. And then Messiah jumps a decade and a half into the future and the war's over and we're sort of dealing with the ramifications of it. The book doesn't actually cover this holy war, but it looks like the film is going to show more of it on screen. Another particular standout is that We have confirmation that Rebecca Ferguson's Lady Jessica is returning, which is another departure from the book. She's talked about having very minimal screen time in this film, which again makes sense. She was not present in the second book at all.
Right.
So her scenes are going to be pretty minimal. Um, we see a little bit of Paul and Zendaya's Chani talking about their children, naming their children, which again, I'm curious how we're going to get to that point, considering she probably wants nothing to do with him after he decided to manipulate her people into committing a genocide in his name. So, and she was one of the people opposed to that prophecy the most. She fell for him in the film because his intentions were genuine. He genuinely wanted to learn their ways. But as the visions and the foresight of the future haunted him more, the more he sort of lost his mind almost.
So
And
maybe he becomes the villain in this movie.
he becomes the villain at the end of the last movie, which that was the reason the second book was written. The original author was mad that people interpreted it not the way he wanted them to. He wanted them to be like, no, this is a the kind of person we do not want. This is not a hero. But in the 1960s, everyone's like, oh, this is the good guy. And he's like, no, you idiot. So he wrote an entire book to call them stupid.
Well, that
Uh,
should be interesting for Chalamet to play that part, though.
yeah, I am going to lose. There's a particular sequence, a particular chapter in the book, which I really, really, I don't know if they'll include it, but I really hope they do, where Chalamet's Paul, well, not played by him, but Paul Atreides, he talks about different like emperors from history. He mentions Genghis Khan, he mentions Hitler, and he straight up talks about the statistics of their kill count. He's like, yeah, they were pretty good for those days. And I'm like, hearing that out of Timothy Chalamet's mouth is going to drive some people completely loony. They're going to be like, look, this is their lover boy from all the weird little movies that he's in, talking about how Hitler was a total noob. And yeah, that's going to be kind of weird.
Are
But
we expecting some more trailers? When's the movie come out again?
December 18th, it is stolen the IMAX release slot from Avengers Doomsday. So Avengers Doomsday will not be released in IMAX because Dune
Oh, we
3.
got a whole summer of the trailers to come then.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see anything until mid to late summer. I didn't think we'd see a trailer this early just based on part two, because part two's first trailer was in May of 2023, and at the time it
Right.
was meant to come out in November of 2023. It was later pushed to March 2024. But I was like, I don't think we're seeing a trailer till June at the earliest, but we got one last week. So,
All
you know,
right.
a win's a win.
I
Another
guess we all got to get started.
Yeah, there's a couple more things I want to mention before we go any further. This might get a little longer than usual, but there's a bunch of footage of there's not much footage of one particular character who's a primary antagonist in the book. His name's Sighttail. He's a face dancer for the Benny Lilacs faction, which basically means he is a shapeshifter, but it's not sort of like magic shapeshifting. It's more like basically he's got this ability programmed into him where he can basically rewrite his DNA to steal people's identities. We see him a bit in the trailer very briefly. He's played by Robert Pattinson, who is new to this film's cast. Um, so that'll be interesting to see how they sort of pull off the visual effects of his transformations when he takes on different people's faces. Also, I need to point out the music. The music is insane in the trailer. They have sort of this war chant, but they've talked about the music explicit, like vividly. Hans Zimmer composed the track with input from Villeneuve, and the actual chanting was performed by Chalamet himself. And the way
Mhm.
it's incorporated is just insane. We are going to see the depths of sort of this genocidal conquest against the universe.
All right. Sounds like it's gonna be interesting. I have to go check out the trailer, I guess. So
You've seen the other two yet?
no, I gotta go watch the Dunes.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea. You've got enough
Yeah.
time. You've got till Christmas.
Anything else you want to say about the trailers?
Um,
Or
no,
good?
that's the bulk of what I wanted to say here.
All right.
I mean, I could go on about it for hours, but we don't have hours, so we're gonna get to the next thing.
All right. So next we're gonna talk about TV show episode one of Steel Ball Run: JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Just from the name, you gotta tell me what this is even about.
So this is the sixth season of a long-running Japanese anime series called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's based on a manga or a Japanese comic, and in the manga, there's a like consistent linear storyline, but it's divided into parts. Each part is a different storyline with a different main character that connects to everything that came before.
Okay.
The manga is up to part 9 right now, but this Steel Ball Run is part 7 of the manga or season 6 of the TV show. And what makes this one sort of interesting is at the end of the previous part or the previous season, Stone Ocean, the universe got reset. So we are in a completely new universe from the previous seasons. The main conflict is between the Joestar family and this crazy, power-hungry vampire named Dio, but that conflict is resolved with the universe resetting, so we are in a brand new timeline with brand new members of the main Joestar family.
Hmm.
So this,
So this is episode one. Did you get introduced to a new antagonist?
we don't actually meet this storyline's main antagonist until like halfway through. We've got like minor antagonists and supporting antagonists, but the main antagonist of part 7 is not introduced to this early. We will not see him anytime soon.
Really?
But we introduced to our main protagonist, which is Johnny Joe Star is his name. He is a disabled former jockey who was shot once and now he can't use his legs. And there's two protagonists actually. The other one is a guy named Gyro Zeppeli, who is this Italian. He was an executioner, but he's come to America in this is the late 19th century, so 1890.
Hmm.
And this like businessman named Stephen Steele orchestrates this big event that everyone from the world is coming to called the Steel Ball Run, which is a horse race from California to New York, which is like some monumental event. The winner gets like 50 million bucks or something.
So this is in America, late 1800s.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, this franchise likes its sort of historical time period. Some of the earlier parts in the old universe had us in like 1930s, like the Nazis were in part 2 for a little,
Hmm.
or like we were in the late 1800s in part 1, because the original story took place from the late 1880s to the early 2010s,
Interesting. Okay.
and this storyline goes back to the 1890s for this new universe.
So how did they do in the first episode?
So seeing as this is an adaptation, I've read a little bit of the manga it's based on. It's a
Hmm.
faithful adaptation, and we waited a while. The last season of the TV adaptation, the animated adaptation, came out. God, I think that ended late 2022, so we've been waiting a while for this. And we knew this would be a while because this is the longest story part, but right now Netflix is doing a wonderful job distributing it. And by wonderful, I mean they have not communicated anything. We have no idea when the next episode's coming out, but
Oh, jeez.
they just dropped this episode and just have not told us anything. So we have no idea what they're doing now.
So how would you say the rating on the first episode?
It's very well made. The characters are all introduced well, faithfully to the manga counterpart. I mean, this particular series does like to stay pretty close to its original source material. Like they'll be line for line, word for word, like a straight up adaptation of the source. The one thing that always stands out with this series is actually the music, which from part 3 onwards has been composed by a man named Yugo Kanno, who is very good at what he does. He's
Hmm.
this one, it's sort of, I don't think he leaned into sort of the Western vibes as much as he could have with this particular part, but I like how he incorporates older motifs, particularly with the character of Diego Brando, who is this new universe's reimagining of Dio, and he's like the best horse jockey in the world at this point. And
Mhm.
when we're first like introduced to him up close, he incorporates Dio's old theme from the old timeline. He incorporates that motif in there a little bit, but it's not as grandiose as Dio
Right.
is because this guy is not quite as flamboyant as his original counterpart. Like his
Hmm.
original counterpart wants to rule the world and control everything. This guy wants to be the mayor of New York. That's his big ambition.
Has the composer done anything else that we've heard of?
Probably he does a lot of Japanese stuff. He did actually do an episode of Star Wars Visions last year.
Okay.
which is another anime, Star Wars's little anime anthology series, where it's just a bunch of anime studios from Japan do episodes of their own. And he
Yeah.
proposed one episode for the latest season of that, which was a follow-up to an episode from the first season, which is getting its own spin-off show later this year, which I do hope he returns to score that whenever that comes out.
All right, so you recommend this one?
Yeah, I'm not, I mean,
Can you watch this? Can you watch this episode without having to watch the other seasons?
Um, in theory, yes, but if you interact with anybody else who is a fan of this franchise, they will shun you in your bloodline from like history.
Gotcha.
It's like an unspoken rule, except it's not unspoken. It's at all. It's very, very
Mm,
spoken. You do
okay.
not part skip. You do never never skip a part. You start from the beginning and watch it in order.
Got it. Okay.
So
Well, that's going to take a bit of time. So,
yeah, it's
all
quite
right. Anything else on Steel Ball Run?
um what was I going to say? I don't remember where I was going with this, but Netflix, please tell us when the next episode comes out. I am not asking for much here, just a little bit of communication. Because the release schedule for the previous season, Netflix had distribution rights for the previous season as well. They handled it horrendously. They released it in batches. Like they released 12 episodes in December of 2021. Then we go 9 months. They're just like, it comes out next fall. They drop 12 episodes in September of 2022, 9 months later. And then the final 14 episodes in December of 2022. But at the bare minimum, at least they communicated with us. Now they released one episode and have just said nothing since. It's like, okay,
You do kind of wonder if they're doing that on purpose because it makes it intriguing, I guess, when you don't know anything and it just pops.
yeah, well, the only problem is if it pisses enough people off, we'll just go read the source material. The manga's been finished since 2011, and again,
Yeah.
this series particularly does not stray that far from its source material. It tends to stay
Right.
pretty close. So,
Yeah.
like, there are so many like shots and frames in this series that are like straight up like complete like total recreations of like panels from the manga.
Hmm.
Like I could go back and read the first volume of it and like pretty much shot for shot it is a recreation of it is a like moving counterpart of the still images.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's go on to the big thing. Your big movie. Thursday, you watched Project Hail Mary. And
10 out of 10, go see it in IMAX. If you're seeing it in any format less than that, you're doing it wrong.
10 out of 10. Wow, that's your best rating yet.
Is it? I gave The Godfather a 10 out of 10 as well, did I not?
Maybe you did. All right.
I
So
think
tell me, you saw in IMAX? Give me the plot
so. This is
without
a
spoiling anything.
okay. This is a sci-fi film set in or I guess the setting doesn't really matter, but it's sort of this near future. It's actually got a lot in common with Interstellar on its like primary level. In this particular case, it's not the Earth is dying, it's the sun is dying, and they don't know why. And so Ryan Gosling's character, Ryland Grace, is this like middle school teacher who is way too qualified to be a middle school teacher, and they're like, you've got a like PhD in this particular area of science they need the help in. And he is probably the most qualified person for the job, but he's also a complete failure and a total wuss. So they ended up sending him to space to sort of
Okay.
figure out what's wrong with the sun. And in the process, he finds out that almost every other star in this system and the neighboring systems are all dying because of the same thing. And he meets this little alien who looks like he's made of rocks, so he calls him Rocky, who is on the exact same mission to save his star from the same fate. So he sort of ends up being the heart of the story is sort of the friendship between Gosling's Ryland Grace and this little alien Rocky, who is not even CGI. He is a practical effect. He is fully puppeteered and he looks amazing.
Hmm.
Um, and sort of we learn there's elements that are sort of reminiscent of Arrival in there a little bit too, where there's a little segment where he has to learn how to sort of translate the weird sounds Rocky makes, and he starts using this computer once he starts translating what each sound means, and sort of they become sort of you have Rocky talking through the computer translating it.
Hmm.
has some very funny interactions because Rocky does not entirely understand how humans work and think.
Who does?
That's true. That's very
Hmm.
true. I don't know how my own brain works, and it's been 20 years, so
Yeah.
we're still
All
trying
right,
to.
so they end up on a mission together and to save the world.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
assuming they do save the world, but don't tell me.
yeah, I'm not going to say nothing. That's a major spoiler. So it's
So you
also,
liked the character of Rocky.
yes, they're going to make millions of marketable plushies of him now. Mark my words. This is the cute marketable character, but done right.
Yeah.
Um,
Is it only in the movies or was it streaming at the same time? Because I thought it was a Netflix movie.
no, straight to theaters. It was built with premium formats in mind, particularly IMAX
Hmm.
and IMAX 70 millimeter and IMAX 1.43. It's
Okay.
directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who have not directed a film in eight, no, 12 years actually, I think was the last time they directed a feature. But previously they directed um the movie remakes of 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street, as well as
Hmm.
2014's cult classic The Lego Movie.
Okay.
Um,
Do they always direct together? Because that's unique.
yes. Yeah, they've been a filmmaking duo. They were attached to direct Solo, a Star Wars story at one point, but they were fired from the production with less than a year out and replaced with Ron Howard.
Oh,
Um,
they're the ones that he replaced.
yes, they were set to direct
How
it.
come they got fired?
I think it was creative differences, and I have heard they're not the best people to work with either. I've heard a lot of rumblings
Gotcha. Because they just like working with each other, but nobody else.
because they produce films a lot. They've produced more than they've directed. More
Gotcha.
lately, particularly with the Spider-Verse animated films, what they produced. Oh, they directed Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs as well.
Hmm.
But they
Okay.
produced the animated Spider-Verse films, brilliant films, but there have been so many allegations of like workplace crunches and workplace abuse on those movies. It's absolutely insane.
Hmm.
So I'm like, I kind of get why they didn't keep them on. I mean, there was also supposedly like a lot of creative differences with how they handled Han Solo's character in that film.
Gotcha.
But
All right. So back to Project Hail Mary. What did you like the best?
so after this, I'm actually kind of like, I honestly would have liked to see their take on Han Solo after this because I think they absolutely could have done. I mean, they just gave us an excellent sci-fi adventure film.
Right.
And I'm going to go on a tangent about this was the thing that had me most excited. Not Lord and Miller, not Gosling, not the Rock Alien. No, the best thing that had me so excited for this was the cinematographer.
Which is
Name's Greg Fraser. He is one of the best currently working. He is a three-time Academy Award nominee and a one-time winner. He was nominated for the 2016 film Lion. He won in 2022 for Dune, and he was nominated again for Dune Part 2. His schedule's busy, so he will not be returning for Part 3, but he this is the first film he's shot since Dune 2, and
hmm.
goodness gracious, he delivers. The
How so? What is cool about it?
He's always been very good when it comes to sort of the understanding of how colors function, not just visually, but how they sort of relate to a story. But I think in terms of those colors, this is probably the most vibrant film. We have like bright neon greens, bright pinks. When we get to
Hmm.
like, there's a sequence right at the end of the second act, or right at the start of the third act, where they're near this planet that is like this giant like gas ball planet, and we spend a lot of time in that area. But the
Hmm.
way they sort of use shadows, because this is planet is it's not actually a planet it's a planet nearby this star, and the
Okay.
star is like we're so close to it, it sort of shadows the entire ship. And we get a
Yeah.
lot of exterior shots of both the ship, and there are a bunch of sequences where Gosling goes outside on top of the ship, stands on top of it, and
Hmm.
sort of the way they use shadows there to sort of convey the scale of this thing compared to
Hmm.
this rinky-dink little spaceship. It just looks insane. And again, it's filmed with IMAX in mind. You watch that mixed with like the IMAX sound, the IMAX screen. It is
Hmm.
absolutely magnificent to look at. Like there are so many frames in this movie that look like paintings. They are majestic as hell.
Okay.
Um,
Sounds cool.
I also want to talk about the music as
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
It's composed by Daniel Pemberton, who is a frequent collaborator of Lord and Miller, previously doing most famously the scores for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which I still think Into the Spider-Verse has one of the best scores of all time. But here, it's very different compared to stuff I've heard from him before. It's a lot more atmospheric and more akin to something you'd hear from like Hans Zimmer on a
Mhm.
film like, again, back to the Interstellar comparisons. His sort of the style he uses here, you've got sort of Pemberton's little niche where it's more digital and a little electronic at times, but it still feels very like Hans Zimmer, very interstellar-y. Again,
Mhm.
going back to that sequence with that gas giant planet. There's a sequence where they have to go into the atmosphere of this planet, which,
Mhm.
in terms of the music and the visuals, it's very sort of similar sound-wise to the sequence in Interstellar, where you see like Matt Damon trying to park the ship at the space station before it
Right.
blows up. Who is calling me? Hold on. It's a scam call. Nothing worthwhile.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Tell them we're busy.
Yeah,
Man.
a little preoccupied at the moment. More important things than someone from Virginia has to say to me.
So what do you think so that sounds like one of the best scenes. Any other good scenes that stood out?
It's actually a very good sort of exploration of character because for the first like third of the movie, Ryland Grace has not actually met Rocky yet. So for the first like
Mhm.
30, 40 minutes, you don't meet Rocky until almost an hour in. And we do flash back a bunch because Ryland
Yeah.
Grace has not, when he wakes up from that amnesia after the space thing, oh, for crying out loud, I'm not answering you. Leave me alone. Um, yeah, as I was saying, when Grace wakes up at the beginning of the film, he has no memory of where he is or why he's here or what he's doing. So you
Mhm.
progressively get sort of these flashbacks of everything leading up to him going on the ship. But you sort of learn more about him. At the beginning, he's like, oh, I guess I'm some like hero or something. But you sort of learn he is a failure in basically every way. He has a PhD,
Yeah.
some like advanced science, and he's teaching middle school. Like he could have gone on to do great things, and yet he's accomplished nothing really substantial. And they bring him into this program, and he chickens out because he thinks he's not good enough. Eventually, they convince him to go on.
Hmm.
I'm going to dive into some spoilers here, so here's a little bit of a warning. But as he like progressively learns what happened, he learns that he was not originally intended to go on this mission to space. He did not like muster up the courage to go on this ship.
Hmm.
They needed three people, a pilot, an engineer, and a science officer, but their original science officer was killed when the alien parasite that was attacking the sun, which they had samples of, they had accidentally gotten too much of it, and it sort of blew up one of the buildings with their science officer still inside. So
Hmm.
desperately, with like 3 hours till launch, they drug him and force him to go on the mission. They're
Gotcha.
like, "You are our only hope," and he tries to run. They force him.
So he's a coward the whole time.
Yeah, until the end of the film. But
Right.
something goes drastically wrong with sort of after he sends the samples that he found back to Earth. He
Yeah.
finds out he has a choice of either going back home or going to save Rocky after they've parted ways. And he chooses to go save Rocky, even if he's not sure if he'll be able to make it home, and he's not sure
Yeah.
he very well could die in a fiery death here. So he chooses to save Rocky. He
Where would you put this in the Ryan Gosling movies?
right next to Blade Runner 2049. It's not quite on the same tier, but Blade Runner 2049 is directed by my goat Denis Villeneuve. Yeah, like you're not getting better than that, but this was very, very good, nevertheless. Definitely the best new release of 2026 so far. Obviously,
Hmm.
we're barely a third of the way through the year, and there's a lot of time to go, but
Yeah.
as it stands, it is the best film of the year we're looking at right now.
Okay. That's pretty good. You think there'll be a part two or no? We're done.
The author of the book it's based on, Andy Weir, has said that he has had ideas for a follow-up to the book, but he's not committing to them because he doesn't think he has enough. And he says he will not write a sequel unless he feels like he has something worth telling in a
Yeah.
sequel.
Is this
So,
his first book in a that's been made to a movie?
no, he previously wrote The Martian, which was adapted into a
Oh, that was a good movie.
yeah, Ridley
You
Scott did that in 2015. I need to check that out at some point as well.
never saw it?
And I have not.
Oh, that's a good movie. Yeah, I liked it.
So I've heard.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's higher up on my watch list after this, but
Yeah, it's good.
I've heard the books for both films are actually the original books are both quite good as well. I've actually heard the audiobook is really good for Project Hail Mary, which is probably the only way I'm going to read it because I read at the pace of a snail. So
All right. Well, sounds like a great movie. What else you want to say about Project Hail Mary?
I
You
think
covered all?
I do want to talk about Sandra Huller's performance, and I definitely pronounced her name wrong, but
Okay.
she's a supporting character in the flashback. She's like this military officer who is, I want to say, like Swedish or something. I don't actually know, but she's European. She's like this military officer who
Hmm.
recruits Rylan, and she is sort of, she isn't in it. She's only really in it during the flashback sequences, but she always comes off as this sort of cold, emotionless character. I mean, she doesn't react to, she takes sarcasm very literally at points. Like there's a scene where Gosling makes a joke and she interprets it pretty literally.
Hmm.
But
She
in
did a
that
good job. She was good in the
in that
movie.
yeah, but it's sort of you see her play this cold character, but sort of Gosling
Yeah.
urges her to open up a little bit and sort of be willing to be a little bit vulnerable, even if she's not going
Right.
to do it often, because it's still weird and unnatural to her the way she's been raised, the way she's sort of meant to
Yeah.
act.
Well, it's
But
just, and maybe in her role, it's a serious issue she's dealing with too, so it may be hard to be funny.
yeah, I'm actually pretty sure
Have we
she's in.
seen her in anything else?
Um, I know she's been in some pretty I'm pretty sure she's been nominated for an Oscar before, and she's going to be in a couple more things this year. I don't remember what it was for, but I know I've heard a lot about her and other things, and I know she's going to be in a couple big things this year. She's going to be in Alejandro Iñárritu's Digger in the fall, which is starring Tom Cruise. That's the same guy who did Revenant, Birdman. So she'll be in that this year. I
Okay.
if she ends up being up for an Oscar this year, I reckon it'll be for that and not this,
Right, right, right.
but we're not even close to award season. We don't have enough to go off of yet.
Yeah, we just got through the last one, so
That's true. We got through that. It was literally the last episode, which at the time of recording this aired yesterday. So
that's right. All right, well, let's keep moving then. Let's go on to Star Wars time. We got five things that could have been seen in the Acolyte season two, but the
uh,
show got canceled. So tell me what happened here. We had a season and then got canceled.
So to put it simply, Star Wars fans are misogynistic and stupid and really, really boring. They hate things that are new and they hate things that are new and actually move the franchise in directions that are not just, look, it's Anakin again.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
they seem to quite like shows that do the look, it's Anakin again because they cheer and clap and piss their pants when they see Hayden Christensen come back to deliver the worst dialogue you've ever heard in a Star Wars project since the last time he delivered dialogue in a Star Wars project. But
Mm.
this, and despite its issues, I think this show's was one of the more interesting ones in recent memory because it is the first on-screen project to move outside of the time period of the Skywalker saga. The
Okay.
nine films, there's like the nine films and almost everything else in terms of on-screen content. We've seen stuff in books and old video games in the old continuity, showcasing stuff before and after the movies, but in the current
Mm.
canon, everything on screen, the TV shows and the video games are treated as supplementary material. They exist in between the films. And this is a franchise with maybe 25,000 years worth of lore and history that they could cover, and yet they cram everything into this 70-year time period with a particular focus on either that era between episodes 3 and 4 and
Yeah.
the period of The Mandalorian has been a big focus lately, which is kind of getting really dry really quickly. But this show took place in 132 BBY, which is exactly a century before the Phantom Menace. So not as far back as we could go, but it was a step in the right direction. And
Okay.
it definitely had its issues, but sort of this story was almost a murder mystery of sorts, where this Force-sensitive assassin starts murdering Jedi connected to her past. But this sort of a Jedi strike team led by Master Soul, who is portrayed by Lee Jung-jae of Squid Game fame, um, sort of finds out that this is connected to his past as well. And his former Padawan is connected to this, who had left the Order, because this is his former Padawan's sister, who they all thought was dead. But it also seeks to unveil a greater conspiracy connected to a more sinister organization in the shadows, perhaps the Sith, which at this point in the timeline the Jedi had believed were extinct for 900 years, which does
Mm.
turn out to be the case when we meet our assassin's master, who is known only as the Stranger, which is another irritating thing, and I think that leads perfectly into our first point. Um, the Stranger.
Yeah,
Excellent
okay.
villain, very mysterious. He was played by Manny Jacinto, who later appeared in whatchamacallit, Freaky Friday's sequel. He was in that. He's been in a couple other things, but he is a very sort of fascinating villain because he's not sort of the same as a lot of other Sith. He's definitely Sith. He's a manipulator. You see him manipulating our series' protagonist, Osha, towards the
Mm.
dark side, but his method of manipulation is a lot different than someone like Palpatine. And he doesn't seem quite as sadistic as Palpatine either. Like, he's not someone like Palpatine who's just evil for the love of the game. There's a
Mm.
tragic backstory in there. We have no idea what exactly that entails. Actually, I'm gonna bring this up because I have this on my desk. We've got an action figure of the Stranger here to sort of
Oh.
showcase. His design is awesome. Just look, his helmet's got no eye slots or like barely visible eye slots, and the sort of the teeth on it. I fans nicknamed him Smilo Ren for
Mm.
that helmet design, but he
All
is
right. So one thing would have been nice to hear about more about the stranger, I guess. But
yeah, his he's very mysterious. We have sort
mm.
of hints laid out at the end of this season, leading to his
Mm.
backstory in episode 6 of season of the series. After we had finally taken his mask off and seen who he was under the mask, we sort of get a more character-driven episode, which focuses on him trying to manipulate Osha, while Master
Mm.
Soul's grappling with the fact that his entire strike team, including his Padawan, were all just slaughtered very violently.
Mm.
But part of his manipulation is he tries to get vulnerable. He gets vulnerable with Osha. I know they use the term seduce to the dark side a lot, but when we talk about seduce to the dark side, he was doing it very literally here. He took seduce a little literally here. Uh,
Yeah.
so
All right. Tell me something else we could have learned.
um, we would have seen a lot more of some of the. We had a couple. The first season brought in the character of Vernestra Rwo, Vernestra Woe from the High Republic Initiative, which is a series of books that take place about 100 years before this show.
Mm.
We've learned from this show that a lot of alien species have several century lifespans that we didn't know about before. But she is around 117 years old at this point. But we would have gotten a lot more of her since we learned that before the stranger fell to the dark side, he was her Jedi apprentice who had fallen to the dark side, which fans speculated about a couple weeks before that was officially revealed when he showed off these scars on his back that resemble a light whip.
Mm.
And but we also, I believe, would have seen a character named Ty York from the comics from the High Republic Initiative was rumored to appear in the season. There were a bunch of leaks actually about the second season, because rumors have it that they had actually put together a writer's room to write sort of an outline for season two
Mm.
before season one was canned, before the series was canned.
Yeah.
So I don't entirely trust the source. It was an anonymous source on the Star Wars Leaks Reddit. I wasn't entirely confident in them until I talked to a friend of mine about a tie-in book to The Acolyte that came out last year, which which had that character who was supposed to supposedly appear in the show focused on a bunch in that tie-in book.
Hmm.
Also, we've heard that sets the same friend I talked to actually has met the guy who played the stranger, said that they picked out a Sith name for him, like a Darth name. So they had a name for him. We don't know what
So
it was, but
so they had that going, or yeah,
he said he's when he people have seen him at conventions, he gets all he everyone says that he looks all sad that he can't actually continue this story.
yeah. Now, what
Which,
is a light whip? That's not the same as a lightsaber, I guess.
well, yes, but actually no. So it is a type of lightsaber, and Vernestra particularly wields sort of a hybrid or dual phase saber,
Mhm.
which can function as a regular lightsaber, but there's like and certain lightsaber types have different sort of settings that can change what they are or how they
Mhm.
function. Particularly with the dual phase lightsaber, which Darth Vader wields, where he can sort of extend its blade and make it a little heavier when he
Mhm.
needs to. But this sort of dual phase is it can become a whip, which means the blade is looser. We see a small snippet of it in season one, just so they can tease us with it, which we would have seen more of it because the same leaks I've mentioned before mentioned that the season would have ended with a confrontation between the stranger and his former Jedi master. And
Mhm.
with sort of the fight choreography that this show has, and the way they sort of incorporate martial arts into it, it's the most electric fight choreography I've seen in Star Wars in years. So I would have
Is
loved,
it? It's live action.
yes,
Mm.
I would have loved to see sort of how they improve on it and how they incorporate things like the light whip, especially compared to
Yeah.
someone like the Stranger's fighting style, who he's a very sneaky kind of character. Interestingly, his lightsaber is also sort of a dual phase in a way, where it is a single-bladed like normal lightsaber, but he can detach a tinier hilt from the bottom to reveal his backup, his little Shoto.
Yeah.
I'm using the action figure here to sort of demonstrate what that is for.
Well, it's too bad they didn't bring the light whip into the nine movies. That would have been cool to see.
Yeah, they experimented with a little bit in some of the animated stuff, but not too much.
Right.
And
Yeah.
in the expanded universe, it was more prevalent. There was a character in the old expanded universe, which is no longer canon, in which this
Mhm.
character named Lumaya, who was an apprentice of Darth Vader and a rival of Luke Skywalker's, she wielded a light whip.
Mm.
In She appeared in the original 1977 comic series, which ran for like 8 years. It was published by Marvel, and it started by adapting the original movie before sort of going in its own category, and it kept going throughout the run of the original trilogy
Yeah.
as the films were coming out, and even after the movies, it started telling stories after
Mm.
Return of the Jedi before the series was finally pulled in I think 85.
Yeah. You
But
think we would have seen more Yoda?
absolutely, the final frame were one of the last things we see in the season. The first season is Vernestra, who is now trying to cover up this conspiracy so that like the Jedi don't and the Republic and the Senate don't find out that the Sith are still alive.
Mhm.
Because again, at this point, they are believing the Sith are extinct. For what it's worth, Vernestra doesn't know that Chimere is directly affiliated, or the Stranger is directly affiliated with the Sith. She just knows
Mhm.
that he's alive and he's evil, and something needs to be done about that, and she needs to deal with it before it causes more panic. Um, at the end of the season, the last scene we see of her in season one is she goes into this meditation chamber and she's like, all right. She's like, Master, I need your help. And it sort of pans down and you see the back of Yoda's head.
Ah.
And that was sort of one of the teases they did for the two masters of light and dark. The other one being a brief tease of a character who has been mentioned in the movies. He was mentioned in episode three when Palpatine talks about the tragedy
Yeah.
of his own master. But this is Palpatine's master, Darth Plagueis, who is a character
Yeah.
in a book in the expanded universe, but in canon he has only been mentioned, never seen. So this
Huh.
that brief cameo he had in the finale, where we see him peeking through a cave as the stranger and Osha are leaving to confront
Mhm.
Master Soul for the last time, you see him
Mhm.
sort of looming ever so slightly. And it's been confirmed in like interviews and stuff that he is the Stranger's master. The Stranger is his first apprentice before Palpatine.
Got it, got it.
But
Because Yoda is 800 years old or something, right?
at this point, he's probably in his late 700s.
Yeah, still. So yeah,
Yeah,
he's
so
seen a ton.
yeah, I think at this point in the timeline, he should be, I want to say 766, if my math is correct in
Hmm.
the show. But
Yeah,
yeah, he's been here for a while. He was in the High Republic books as well, which take place a century before this.
got it, got it. So he's been around forever and ever. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been
Tell me
alive.
about the Knights of Ren.
So that's an interesting thing that was first teased in episode 5 of the show after a fight, after the big fight sequence. Kymir is distracted long enough for Sol and May to escape, but the stranger sort of he gets picked up by these weird bug things, fights them off for a little bit, and when he drops down and finds his helmet, he picks up his helmet, and the composer for the music is his name's Michael Abels. He sort of was involved in this. You hear a hint of Kylo Ren's theme. You hear Kylo
Hmm.
Ren's motif played briefly at the end of the episode, and that was not on accident. That was a
So you
deliberate.
think this is the start of that the order of the Knights of Ren?
Um, It was stated in just recently there was a guidebook, or not a guidebook, but a book that showed a lot of concept art for the show. They do these art of books a lot for movies and shows where it's like the art of this show. They
Hmm.
just released the art of the Acolyte. Oh, I kicked that. Okay. The art of the Acolyte last month, and there are comments in the book that suggested that at some point in the series, the stranger was intended to break off from the Sith Order and
Okay.
found this organization, the Knights of Ren, which you can sort of already tell with how his philosophy is portrayed in the first season in the because his philosophy is less so wanting to control power and more so he sort of talks about how the Jedi have sort of this monopoly on the Force, and you see them sort of displaying this when you see the Jedi meet these force-sensitive sect of witches, and they deem
Mhm.
them a danger immediately, even though they're not really hurting anyone. And you sort of
Yeah,
see
gotcha.
the
So he just
Jedi
wants to be anti-Jedi as much as anything else.
he wants to be able to use the Force. He's insistent, and that's sort of part of his manipulation tactic to turn Osha to the dark side, is
Hmm.
sort of his insistence on just wanting to wield that power he has the way he
Yeah.
wants to, because the Jedi have this whole, like, again, this monopoly. If you're not wielding it the way they say to wield it, then it's inherently wrong, which, I mean,
Hmm.
we also know the Sith are bad guys. We, the audience, know this,
Yeah.
but he doesn't even inherently believe the sort of Sith philosophy. And his philosophy lines up with we don't really get much of the Knights of Ren in the movies. We get a very minimal amount of them outside of Kylo himself.
Hmm.
I mean, we see them in episode 9, but they don't really do much, and then they all die. So in the comics we see a lot more of them and we see the leader of the organization, we see Kylo Ren's direct predecessor who straight up
Yep.
explains he's like we don't really need power, like he's not here conquering or killing for no they're basically just crazy anarchists who want to do whatever the hell they want with no one stopping them. They don't want galactic domination. And you
Right,
sort of
right,
again that lines up with our the stranger and sort of how he perceives the force and the dark side and the light.
right.
So that sort of
Good.
philosophy, you see that philosophy and it lines up. It makes sense that this is where or at least on paper, they thought about taking the story of this character.
Well, it's too bad they didn't produce season two then. So maybe
Yeah,
it'll come out still.
I doubt it. Star Wars fans are nasty pricks, and Disney really likes money. So,
Right, 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 right. Yeah, this sounds like a series that'd be for the hardcore fan.
yeah.
All right. Well, that wraps up our agenda for today. So next week we're gonna do a movie review of The Godfather Part Two. You're gonna
Yep.
watch it now?
I saw it 2 days ago.
Oh, all right, great.
I'm ahead of the
And
curve.
we got important things we want to watch before Mall Shadow Lord. What is that? Is that coming out?
Yes, that will be not the next episode, the following episode. We will cover the first episodes. So I
Uh-huh.
decided before that we should cover a couple essential things that are
Got it.
kind of important leading into it. And I already have a sort of
Got
list
it.
in mind.
All right. And then what's the next movie you're going to see?
On Friday, I'm going to see, or at least at the moment, I plan to see this movie called They Will Kill You. It's from Warner Bros. And New Line. It's got Zazie Beetz in it. And I think the dude who played Draco Malfoy and Harry Potter's in there, which
Huh.
is amazing because that is the first time I've seen him do anything in the last 20 years because he's kind of devolved into being a pathetic, we're just going to keep coming back to Harry Potter because I've got nothing else to do with my life. So I know nothing about this movie. I have not even seen a trailer. I was just like, I'm bored and it's coming out, so why not?
Okay. You have to let me know how it goes. So
Yeah, we'll discuss it a little bit next week. I don't have overly high hopes, but again, I'm bored and why not? That's the
you never
mentality.
know. You never know. Yeah. So,
We'll
all
see.
right. Well, thanks for everybody. I guess that's a wrap.
That is, in fact, a wrap.
All right. Bye.